Great. All right, so I'm going to kick off with a couple of slides, and then we'll go into some open discussion on that. So if you just give me about 15 minutes on this, and then we can have a really nice, robust discussion. All right, so the title is Talent Rules. I often say to organizations that I believe the organizations that will win into the future are those that have the best talent, not those that have the best technology. That sounds sort of wrong with me saying that, but what I mean by that is, at the end of the day, who innovates your technology, who implements it, who upholds it, it's eventually at the end of the day the talent. And I'm just keep on reading more and more. In South Africa yesterday, I read another article on what massive shortages there are of talent right now. Never mind in 3 to 5 years time, but right now, I mean, I think there was, for developers in South Africa, there's currently on the one job site 2,300 vacancies, and I mean that's just one smallish country. So you can now take that and just think about the rest of the world. And one of the issues we believe that organizations are not thinking about enough is that strategic workforce planning. What do I need now, and what do I need into the future? Okay, so that's the reason why we call Talent Rules. This is one of the free presentations of the Access Agile Festival, which has been cleverly called a Freestival. So this was a follow-on from the Agile 20 Reflect Festival that was held in February to honor the 20th anniversary of the signing of the Agile Manifesto. I was actually right at the beginning on that journey with Scott Seawright and the teams, and we were hoping to have 100 events at that particular festival. Eventually, there was over 800 events all over the world in various different languages, and every single one of them was free. So now there's, over the next few days, there's the next version of this, again, a Freestival. All of the events are free. Please go onto their website and have a look at all of the, there's the website there. It's www.access-agile.org. And you'll see so many fantastic events over the next 3 days. You're welcome to sign up for any of them. Please take advantage. It is an amazing event, and I was just so pleased to be part of the original one. And this year, actually, at the World Agility Forum Awards, the Agile 20 Reflect Festival won the Leadership in Agile Award. So yeah, something fantastically done by the team. Just a quick intro of us. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but we're the only gold partner, SBCT gold partner for Scaled Agile in Africa and the Middle East. Before you turn off your screens and say, no, please, not safe, we always talk about we don't drink the safe Kool-Aid. We believe it's a way of doing Agile, but we're much more interested in being Agile. And we won the World Agility Forum Award last year, and then obviously part of winning it this year. And we've got a footprint all over the world. But that's enough about us. I think that the way that we're looking at it at the moment is that people need to think beyond just Agile now. So there's the Agile transformation, the digital transformations, the open platforms, the ecosystems. And in the center of all of that is the work that needs to be done. And we've sort of broken that up into a matrix called why are we doing this work? How are we doing this work? Who's doing it? And where are they doing it? And I'll send out this presentation to all of you, but literally the why is around purpose, vision, strategy. And I think the biggest word that keeps on coming out, and it's part of our purpose as Be Agile as well, is what is that value that we're delivering to our customers, our shareholders, our employees, our communities. Okay, and then the how, it enables innovation, lean agile practices, adaptability, collaboration. You need to look at an integrated business architecture, and work is starting to be delivered through ecosystems. So that means companies are saying, look, we don't have to do everything. We can partner with strategic partners that can provide us with a lot more capability than what we would on our own. And we've seen those ecosystems really getting stronger and stronger. The WHO is delivered through full-time and part-time employees, and we often hear about maximizing demand and capacity. So strategic workforce planning is critical. If anybody is in HR, that's the one thing they should be looking at. Work is augmented through hyper-automation, so we call it cobots. And essentially, part of HR now is to say, how do I look at managing the full work cycle between people and machines? Okay, and then servant leaders enable teams, work is augmented by organizations in ecosystem. And then where, as part of a think tank about 3 weeks ago, where companies were talking about, what's going to happen next in the new world of work. And in fact, all of them said, no, well, as soon as we're ready, we're going to bring everybody back to work. Now, that's not a bad philosophy, other than to say, if I'm one of those developers where there's a shortage of 2,600 or whatever they are in South Africa, I'm more than likely have the power, and not you as the company. So I might actually tell you where I want to work from. And there's benefits and benefits for working on premise, benefits for working remotely, and potentially a hybrid of the two. Because what I think has happened, what a lot of organizations said in that think tank is that, particularly the collaboration, the social interaction has been, not as great, obviously, on the remote as it was in person. So, we're going to see a hybrid of this. And then employees can either work from on-premise. We speak about work from home, but there's also the whole thing about work from anywhere. I mean, Chad has recently moved to Knysna, which is one of the most beautiful cities beautiful villages in South Africa on the coast. It hasn't affected the way we work at all, because he's now, 1,000 kilometers away from us. Workplaces have the tools and capabilities to support work from anywhere, and robust practices are in place to support collaboration, teamwork, and social interaction. So what are the keys to success in an agile world if we bring it back to agile? And you'll see I've got little green faces there, okay, little green smiley faces. In my mind, that is where HR has a role to play. So it's a mindset, it's a business-wide imperative. The 3 key measures of value flow and quality. Work needs to be prioritized. We need to establish cross-functional teams, enable teams to self-regulate, limit work in progress, break work down into bite-sized chunks, make work visual, create psychological safety, drive servant leadership, design to run, grow, and transform the business. Change is continuous. Apply design thinking mindset, adapt and pivot as the market dictates. Communication, communication, communication. Problems we're solving for. Sorry, I'll just bring all of these up. Again, from an agile perspective, and again, you see the little green faces. So in the agile world, we're seeing ineffective team design, and Raju spoke about this, and cross-team dependencies. Yeah. There's no discovery process, feature factories with large never-ending backlogs, limited voice of the customer, slow time to market, focus on delivery output, not outcomes. Tech is sprinting while org stuck, not measuring what matters. Competing business priorities, painful enterprise planning processes. Tech versus business teams. Teams not empowered to solve problems. Missing portfolio. Leadership teams, demand and capacity are not aligned. Leaders are still using command and control. Teams not aligned to business outcomes. If I look, and please, again, we're not punting safe here, but I bring up the safe big picture for a very good reason here. Again, if I look at the big picture and you have a look at all the green smiley faces, this is, I believe, where people are really important and where HR, again, has a role to play in enabling agility. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but literally core values, mindset, principles, implementation, metrics, shared services, vision, KPIs. It's all over the place, and this was when I was going through my SBC training. This is what the picture I saw. So I just saw people, and why it was so important. This is the latest State of Agile report, so the 15th State of Agile report 2021. And if you see what are the most significant barriers to adopting and scaling Agile practices in your current organization? Now I've used a red smiley face here. So number 2 there is organizational culture, general organization resistance to change, lack of skills experience, not enough leadership participation, inadequate management support, insufficient training and education. Then if I go down more to the bottom, unwilling to admit mistakes and learn from delivery failure, minimal collaboration and knowledge pairing. Again, when you look at all of these are the biggest barriers, again, HR has a big influence on all of those. So if we look at these from an HR lens, there's a talent shortage, HR capability quite often. We always hear HR talking about being at the table, the executive table, being strategic business partners. But up until fairly recently, and this sounds like I'm really taking a big dig at HR, but remember both Johan and I come from an HR background, is quite often the HR teams didn't understand the business that they were servicing, that value chain. We are starting to see that change. And we are also starting to see HR teams becoming much more interested in the agile transformations and how they can contribute to that. So integrating automation, with people co-located versus virtual. We spoke about that earlier on, HR preparedness, workforce planning, changing demographics, strategic capability. HR analytics is normally a mess. HR data is very difficult to keep clean. Employee engagement, org design, performance management, transactional HR, leadership mindset, team versus individual, reward systems, fragmented technology ecosystem, agile mindset, agile HR, and global village. And one of the a couple of the foundational changes facing organizations today, if I go to the bottom right-hand one, it's called Martech's curve. We see the waves of innovation and the speed of change curve. There's exponential change. But the way that we manage businesses has changed logarithmically, meaning we don't manage businesses much differently today than we did 30 years ago. And as Rita McGrath at the top says there, and she's become one of the forefront people in strategy, is we are working with outdated tools and assumptions. Again, this capability gap here, I think HR has a big role in closing that gap. And then the one on the left is just saying these are organizations. So a lot of people talk about the new normal and whatever. But I've always sort of started talking about the new abnormal or the next normal. Because if you just want to try and do things similarly to how you did it before, you're not going to be as competitive to those organizations that are actually shaping a whole new way of doing things and most probably unlearning a lot of what they knew in the past. So I'm coming now to, this is sort of my last slide. And what I want us to do now, and we can take each one of these. I'm going to switch off the slideshow and we'll talk face to face. But I want us to talk about, organizational structure traditionally is a functional hierarchy based on individual positions. So in an agile HR world, what do we think that should look like? Performance management focuses on individuals and outputs in a traditional world. What do we think that should look like now in an agile world? Reward focuses on individual remuneration, benefits, and incentives in a traditional sense. How do we see that happening in the new world? Learning focuses on tertiary education. Again, HR focused on best practices. HR focused on immediate talent needs. Career development is management initiated and employee driven. HR measures are focused on efficiency. So all the ones on the left is, the way that HR has worked over the last 20, 30 years. And what I want us to have a discussion about today, and I want us to be a robust workshop, please. We don't have all the answers. We will, towards the end, show a slide of what we think the answers to these could be, but we're also learning, and that's what I'm really looking forward to today, is to learn different thoughts from you guys and the people on this call to say, how do we tackle the issues of org structure, performance management, reward, learning and development, HR strategy and practice, talent and strategic workforce planning, career development, and HR measurement. So I'm going to stop sharing now and just sort of really open it up to everybody. And I see Uche and Bracy have joined us. Welcome. Christina, you joined just before we were going to go into the presentation. So also welcome. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So any thoughts? Anybody want to kick off with any of the stuff that are presented? And please, again, from now on, this is not a facilitated session. This is an open discussion.
Yeah, this is Christy. I can start if you'd like.
Yeah, please, Christina.
Yes. So when I think something that resonates really hard with me is the idea of these individual IDPs or bonuses based on individual performance instead of team-based performance, right? How are we delivering as a team, and are we providing value to the business? That is something that, sorry about that. That is something that I would rather see the team being rewarded instead of the individual being rewarded. And that's something that obviously comes from HR and has to be changed, not only for the performance, but also if there's bonuses associated with those.
Right, thank you, Christina. So let's deal with the reward part first. The reward, team, individual. Let's deal with that because it's one of the big questions. So Christina's, I think if I get you right, Christina is saying, look, we should be looking more towards team than individual. What does the rest of the team think?
Yeah, I kind of definitely agree with that. In fact, the reason is in agile ways of working, there is no heroic performance that is encouraged. Every solution, every, let's say, kind of approach to solving a problem or building a product, whatever it is, you spoke about design thinking and all of that. So ultimately, all of that comes from team, the brainstorming of the team, whole team. It is not like a heroic performance. For example, even when we speak about traditional ways of working, there will be people who will be like, oh, I want to do more, deliver more, show more work done. But in agile ways of working, okay, you can do some more work as a developer, but are you able to get that particular feature tested and moved it to kind of a done state, which you can really demo to the end customer or the user or anybody who is waiting to see that? If not, then you are doing a bad thing, right? So, I mean, you're not being as a team worker, right? So ultimately, in Agile, there is a lot of focus on teams, and teams. So in line with that, and since there is no heroic performance and all of that, it is all about how do we get together as a team and then achieve the outcomes and all of that. We speak about pair programming, mob programming and all of that. We speak about also, what is it? I'm forgetting the exact term there, but we speak about all of that. So ultimately, what Krishna said is right. We need to look at team as a whole, team's performance as a whole instead of individual performance. The word that I was missing was swarming, right? So we are always talking about swarming. So coming together as a team and solving the problem. So yeah, that's what it is.
Thank you, Raj. Anybody else? Yeah.
Hi.
Ketel.
Hey, yeah, there's two parts to it. It's so I'm ex-Suncorp in Australia, which in my mind had at the time I was there one of the better transformations, not just in tech but in business. And so they changed their quarterly reward from high performers individuals to also include high performing teams. Which then meant that that was recognized, and annually there was a big ball, and it, the whole team would go if they were up for nomination for the highest performing team. But the other part of it is also about rewarding individual behavior that supports and enables the team. In other words, so it's not just performance on the outcomes of the team, but as an individual, are you performing as a team player and collaborating. Or if your role is to lead, not manage, lead, or be that servant leader, how are you demonstrating the behaviors that are required for those roles? So that's where it kind of goes full circle from being, managing the team, or, rewarding the team, but also rewarding the individual and saying, right, well, these are the behaviors that you need.
And Greta, if I could ask, who determined the individual excellence? Who voted for that?
I wasn't part of the HR team. I was the recipient of a changed performance management for myself. And it's really attending some of these conversations that then makes me reflect and realize what was happening to us. So to think, I remember thinking, oh yeah, it's not just about me getting to this individual awards ceremony. There are people who are in teams who are here, who are now being rewarded for their teamwork. And so literally, as you said it, I've suddenly gone, join the dots. But my personal quarterly reviews and one-to-ones, which were a bit more frequent, obviously, they would discuss, how was I going from a collaboration point of view? How was I going from, I was a team leader, supporting people, and how was I demonstrating some of those higher performing activities or behaviors that you require to bring the team through, to be a high performing team.
Anybody else want to add anything? And we can always circle back.
Jenny here. Well, we are often talking about what drives you in the team. If you're looking at Maslow's self-fulfillment on the top, what's drives you to be in the team? That you want to create value, you want to be a part of the team, and you want to feel safe in the team. I think HR need to look at this to get the team to work, but also to look at each individual's motivation in the team. And then you can create a good value in the team.
Thank you, Jenny. Anybody else want to add anything? And again, as I say, we can always circle back. I know Raj is very keen to get onto org design because he needs to leave soon. So maybe we can do you mind if we quickly go to org design, and we can always come back to the reward side? Okay, so just want to take a note of Raj's interest. So Raj, the traditional org design was very much around hierarchical structures of leaders and then middle managers and et cetera, silo based. What do you think? What is your view of an ideal organizational design structure in an agile world?
See, my answer would be straightforward, right? So whatever it makes sense for the engineers to come together and deliver whatever value that we are aiming for as an organization, right? So the freedom should be given to the so-called, I don't know, engineering heads or whatever it is, who is not like people managers, but who are engineering managers. When I say engineering managers, they don't bother about, they might do performance appraisals also, that is different, but they're more focused on, ensuring that they solve the problem and then, move forward for delivering value. So that is one key thing. But the problem that we see, okay, what I'm talking about is an ideal state, and it is happening in some organizations for sure, and some of you will be able to acknowledge that. But what is happening right now in many organizations is you have the so-called agile mindset, agile ways of working and all of that. Ultimately, they end up hiring a lot of scrum masters, agile coaches and all of that. On the other hand, they also have the so-called project managers who are actually focusing mainly on what can I get out of the team? or what can I get out of this individual, right? They are still treating people as resources with the traditional mindset, and they see numbers equivalent to people. That means, what is the billing that I'm getting? What is the salary that I'm paying him or her? So how are we going to deal away with it? How are we going to do away with it? Right? Are we going to remove all the project managers? Are we going to tell, okay, you can either be having an organization with project managers or an organization with agile related roles? Are we going to do that? Or are we going to go with some frameworks like SAFe, which renames everybody's role into some relevant or irrelevant kind of roles? Like, for example, suddenly somebody is called as, so and so. I don't want to go into the details, but all of that. What is the solution? I'm just opening some thoughts here, Myles, but feel free to talk based on your experience.
Yeah, that's thanks for that. So I think before I say anything, I don't want to guide people in a different direction. Before I say anything, let's hear from other people on the call.
In case I drop out in the next couple of minutes, I will definitely watch the recording of for the remaining time. Sorry for that. Yeah, please go ahead.
No problem, Raj. And you're always welcome to give me a shout if you want to after this.
Yeah, we are on LinkedIn, so yeah, we can.
Thank you. Okay, is it Breezy? How do I say your name?
Like Tracy. Bracy.
Oh, Tracy. Bracy. Okay. Hi, Bracy. Go ahead.
Yeah, apologies. I'm going to have to drop out too soon because my kids are needing to go to bed soon. But so I'm in Australia at the moment, and I'm a coach in a large financial institution that is going through, has 3 years of transformation at the moment. And one of the things that you mentioned, Raj, is interesting because they went through the process of transforming roles and renaming, I guess, transitioning from traditional roles like project management, project manager to sort of product owner, scrum master, chapter leads, and lots of a lot, and flattening the layers of a hierarchy. So even in the organizational structure, there's probably less levels towards Exco. And it's interesting because 3 years on, we've been trying to do a bit of a system check. I was like, how's it actually going? How's it working for you? Because we've seen lots of new roles popping in because there's almost gaps being filled where they've felt like there's a missing loop, and some of that's caused because of a lack of understanding of the role per se, but also because there is a need to sort of help streamline and coordinate some of this work, and some of those traditional project management bits that help to organize and coordinate have fallen through when there's lots and lots of teams involved in delivering something, and lots of dependencies to intermanage, and if we're not set up right in the value streams, there's quite a lot of in very big organizations, if you don't get the organizational structure matching the delivery sort of structure and the fundamental I guess how we fund our projects and our initiatives, and like if there's so many different layers of HR versus funding versus outcome based, that everything can get so intercrossed, and you're right, like there's almost a what do we do? And we're getting to a point where we're like, things are popping up like little mushroom pockets of, new names are coming through, and then you're like trying to run and going, hey guys, what are you doing? But it's organic, and as long as you've got, and I think the key thing here is the mindset. As long as we try to keep to the real values of what the organization was trying to do to achieve, what was the goal, the main goal of this, and it's really just keeping to that and instilling those values and that mindset in people, and trying to align those other structures that are to work together and not work against each other. But it is confusing in my scale. That was my 2 cents. It's not solvable. It's not solved. I think you just have to work together to make it as good as it can be, and it's an evolution as you go from one stage to another stage, and it'll just continue to evolve. As long as you're not going backwards and you're just moving and transitioning forwards, it's probably the right way to look at it. It's my 2 cents.
Myles, if I can maybe add.
Yeah, just so yeah, sure, yeah. I just want to say to about the whole thing of inspect and adapt. So as we're going along, and we just change it as we and what works. And I think before Johan jumps in there, I just want to say one of the things that hit me recently is I realized that there's not a one size fits all. Never mind across businesses, within the business itself, because the org structure you put in your agile delivery teams could be very different to the org structure you put, let's say, in your call center. And that's one of the big changes I think HR has to make as well, is to think there isn't a one size fits all approach to org design within the business, not just across businesses. Sorry, Johan, you wanted to say.
Yes, Myles, thanks. And I think Ross has now stepped off. And I want to actually go back to one of the first sentences that Ross referred to. And I think Ross referred to what does HR do? What is the role of HR? How does the HR gets involved in terms of design? And I think that comes up more and more for me as the key pinnacle, if we can call it a pinnacle driver in the success of implementing agile structures correctly, referring to the role of HR facilitating. Now, HR's role is, one side is driving certain elements within the organization, and then there's elements in the organization that I think HR or the business have neglected HR in allowing them to do, and that is facilitating elements within organization design. Now, in our days, and I don't want to give our age, away, that one of our key roles as an HR capability is to facilitate organization strategy through to purpose, into the architectures down to people architecture and people execution. And why we have done that as HR is that because everything that's taking, all decisions that's taken within the organization will end up in the people space, referring then to people practices and people policies and people, artifacts that exist within the organization. Now, I do believe HR plays a key role in facilitating within design organization decision-making layers to make sure that we understand and capture the speed of which decision is taking within an organization. And two is also facilitating the structures and how the structures are built and that dynamic around it. And that's on the way which I think, Gretel, I think you referred to that in terms of Maslow. There's certain people dynamics involved in the organization, if you want it or not. And I think there's a lack of focus of that these days. It's very much business driven, fast turnaround, and we don't always understand the people component in terms of what drives them, what motivates them, what keeps them in, what informs them, what helps them to focus and participate, within the organization. Now, we've had a client last week that within the HR space, when we started to talk teams for teams and team performances, and performance on team levels, the statement was, I've appointed an employee, and that's a perception of an employee. I've appointed an employee within the organization, and the employee is arguing with me. Why should I migrate to team and team performance and team development? You have appointed me as an individual within a role, and therefore you need to reward me. Now, there's deeper stuff that HR need to facilitate that's connected to the human within the organization in terms of stuff like terms and conditions of service, etc., that need to be breached and need to be understood in line, understood in line with the design that's happening. And that's why I feel that the role that HR need to play need to be actually enlarged in focus so that HR can have the space and the freedom to facilitate. Now, being an HR, being in the HR space, I know that how we have fight for our own credibility just to have a chair at the table, not even setting the table. And I think that's where HR sometimes fall short, because the business move on very fast, and then business starting to put a design in place where they have not considered all the elements from a people design. and from a people process perspective. And then we're starting to spin as soon as people starts to perform within that design and business starting to ask a question, but why doesn't it work? I think last point is that the involvement of people or HR is not on the right level with the right credibility to influence the thinking of the organization while they go through the transformation. It's neglected.
Thank you. And so just sort of still really, if we can focus on just close off the issue of org design. Has anybody got any further thoughts on the org design and how that should work? And I also like to hear. So Chad doesn't come from Chad comes very much from a real agile professional background, business of value management and all that type of stuff. What's your thoughts, Chad?
Thanks for asking, Myles. I was just going to actually comment. If we consider Conway's law, I don't know if you've heard of Conway's law or inverse Conway's law, where we look at the way that our organizations are structured, often is influenced by the way, and our products related to that are structured the way that our organizations are set up in silos. So typically we'd have three fundamental ways of setting up an organization. It's from a functional perspective. You'd have a back-end developer, a back-end team, you'd have a front-end team, you'd maybe have a DevOps team or department. You could also then have a process driven organization. So these are the guys that do sales, and all the salespeople sit together and work together and relate to each other and design, and the designers and the builders and the QAs and the testers, and then you might have a product specific breakdown. These are the guys who work on iOS, and these are the guys who work on web stuff, and these are the guys who work on home loans. And what we need to do is we need to ask ourselves, from a flow perspective, if you're looking at value stream optimization, minimizing the amount of effort and friction that's introduced from a concept or an idea or a need or a want from a customer's perspective to delivering the value against that. What are the structures that we need to have in place that we minimize the handoffs, that we remove some of those barriers from a communication perspective, from a development, product, a understanding perspective? And we need to start looking at creating structures in our business that need to echo the value that we want to provide. An inverse Conway's law, looking at how value is created and then realizing that through the structure of the organizations. And that means deeply understanding a thing, and I'm using the word value and value streams here, just making an assumption that you know what that means. But in short, it's literally taking a step back and looking at what are the triggers for your business to create something that is material, that is of material value to yourself or to your client. What is the value that gets delivered at the end of that? And then have a look at all of the processes, all of the things that need to happen between the trigger, that desire and need, and the fulfillment of that desire or need. And when we look at those and we consider all of the platforms and systems required to incrementally create more value to the point where we can actually hand off that value and it's realized, we then need to consider all of the people that are working on those systems and the data that flows between them and the processes that we need to use and the governance that we need to use. And once we understand all of those people and how they are set up and structured in these departments that might be functional or product or process that I spoke about before, can we possibly look at changing the way that those organization structures exist so that we can minimize the handoff if we're considering the flow of value, the value stream that we're delivering against. And that's the exercise that we need to go through. If we truly want to optimize and optimize flow and minimize the waste, the friction, the resistance that exists in creating great products and delighting our customers, we need to go through that exercise. And most of the time, having run this, with several clients in several industries, there's always a surprise. It is at least half of the room is amazed by how complex and how convoluted our actual development and our creation process is. The number of systems that we need to touch, the amount of handoffs and escalations and things that need to happen before we can make a simple product decision. So, that's the only thing that I just wanted to add there is, there are ways to help us understand how to change an organization. Myles, I can't remember if it was Myles or Johan, spoken about one of our previous clients. We engaged with them towards the end of 2019 and started having discussions with them. Eventually, it took quite a while to actually to entrench at the client. And during that time, they were approached by a large consulting firm who helped them restructure their business into 6 different silos, 6 departments, business lines. And that restructure didn't consider the actual product sets that they were delivering. They were looking at optimizing the expertise of the leaders in those different areas. And there were several executives that had very strong expertise, of course, but also opinions. And they were then allocated a slice of the pie. And they then formed their organizational unit. They had their own sales team and marketing and development. And unfortunately, each of those 6 different areas had to deliver their products. It's a financial institution. They had to deliver their products on a common infrastructure, a common platform, that underpinned every single one of those 6 different product lines. But yet these 6 high-powered A-type personalities are driving their own agendas, their own budget, their own cost centers, and demanding attention from these poor platform guys and these developers that have got to service these 6, these people that all then ultimately have to report to the board and the CFO. So you can imagine the conflict and the pressure that the individuals that exist, both at the platform level, but also at those individual 6 business lines where they can't get what they need to get done because their executive is going to come down on them like a ton of bricks. And they feel like the platform and the development team are resisting them and just being obstructive. So it's just because the right flow, the right value creation from a business perspective wasn't considered when they structured the organization. So we are fighting that battle at the moment.
Yeah, Myles, can I quickly just compliment to what Chad said? Chad, you're talking about it's important to understand design and need to understand how the people side to that design looks like and how it works and how it's going to play out. I think I've yet need to come across a client that go through change, an organization design change, that embed that change by translating the change and the new world into the policies and practices of that organization. So the culture comes from how we do things and employees experience how we do things. And that comes all from policies and SOPs and standards and procedures and I think we neglect sometimes to say we've made a change in a team and within a program team and with an agile team. And that requires new way of thinking around reward and recruit and how we develop and how we lead and how we source. I don't think that procedure is updated to support that new way of work, which means organizations go rapidly through changes, but the way that we reward and the way that we created policies to enable that and to create rules is still in the old world. It's not adapted. And it's just because we don't translate it into, so what do we need to change now in this organization to enable that?
Yeah, thanks, Johan. Just want to hear from other, Joe, Christina, Jenny, or Gretel on any thoughts around this, any further thoughts on the org design?
I think it was really interesting talking about the organicness of it. So we're very good as humans at trying to fit things in boxes, right? When actually part of what Agile is about, I think, is about the celebration of individuality and how those individuals come together to create something as a team. So I almost feel like with the org structure, we almost need to embrace that as well. So like you were saying, Myles, it will be different within each company and within each department within that company, right? So do we fight against it or do we try and work with it? So that's you almost need to relate it back to the manifesto, which is it's guidelines, it's principles and values. It's not you must do this, right?
Yeah,
That
no,
was
Brian,
it.
I think, yeah, no, I totally love that. I think that one of the things we keep on saying to the HR teams we consult to is this whole thing of learning to unlearn. You know, there's a whole, they've unfortunately done thing, and it's not just HR, finance, procurement, you know, the whole works. So there's Evan Laybourne from the Business Agility Institute always says you can only be as agile as your least agile department. But we see HR as one of the biggest enablers of agile, and they need to change the most, we think. So 100% agree on that. I just wanted to, I did a webinar the other day, and it sort of pitches in with a lot of the things that you've said, and particularly one of the things that Chad said. So, you know, for this is a bank in, it's called the world's best bank. It's a book being written by DBS, which is in Singapore. So, and their 4 themes that they drove at the bottom here was making banking joyful, people transformation. So it's about customers, employees. They transformed their whole business. But what was important about it, where Chad said was business is technology and technology is business. So there's no more front, middle, and back office divisions. That's yesterday's language. Today's language is one bank serving the customers in an integrated manner. And I mean, these guys, sorry, if I just want to quickly go back to that slide. These are all the awards they've won in the last three years or so, including being the only bank to hold these top 3 awards on the left here. They're the only bank ever to have held all of them at the same time. So, you know, it goes to show that this can be done. DBS is a big bank. But yeah, I think, you know, the other things about, I think one of the things Raj said about the engineers sort of having a say. We also often talk, and then I'm going to hand over to Jenny. We often talk about taking this employee-centered design thinking approach. So when we're looking at HR policies and procedures and practices, quite often, and the historical way of doing things is HR to get into a dark corner with one of the big consulting companies, develop this whole new thing, present it to the company as a fait accompli, and then wonder why nobody's happy with it. So now let's again use that agile way of inspect and adapt and, you know, pivot and whatever it is, but do it from a employee design thinking, understanding the employee empathy map, the employee journey map, etc., etc. Yeah, Jenny, over to you.
Yeah, I was thinking of something that is so. We have departments, but we have teams that deliver, that work together, cross-functional teams that deliver, that have a goal to deliver. So if you are a department, it doesn't matter because you have to deliver in the team. But what we need to deliver change. Maybe we have to change the team. You can keep the team maybe, but maybe you have to change the team. And that's maybe against the rules of Agile, I think, to change the teams too much, because the team need to be efficient to deliver. So I have some problem with that. For me, the department who you organize a big company is not that important if you keep the team cross-functional. Do you understand what I mean? But maybe you have to change the team if you have to deliver different things. And maybe that's against Agile, I think, the principles.
I think one of the things, and I think one of the things that Joe said, which is important, is that they're guidelines. So, you know, at the end of the day, you must do what works for your organization. I mean, we do often talk about there's benefit in stable teams, but at the end of the day, if that stable team is not delivering the work, don't have the cross functionality to deliver on the value we want to deliver, then there's no reason why we can't change it. Obviously, you don't want to be disrupting the whole time, because stable teams do get to know each other and get to the rhythm. And it's much easier then to, and we can go back onto reward after this, then it's much easier also to reward teams, you know, from an incentive perspective, if you're not changing them too often. Love to hear from you, Gretel and Christina, what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, so from an HR perspective, I can say the situation that I'm in is that our HR department is not involved at all, which is very sad, because it's not pushing the transformation. It's not helping drive or provide clear career paths for people. So people are kind of out in the black hole universe of where does their career go now that they're not a project manager and have always been a project manager, right? So I'm very much in transformation. In regards to changing teams, I think, you know, being part of transformations and designing and launching arts, I think my principle or my learning has been the first round of design and implementing a agile organization is that we have to be an agile, we have to look at it afterwards and make sure that we allow agile to come in and lean out or make it efficient as much as possible, not to be too concrete at the beginning to say that we're not going to be flexible, which some leaders have a hard time doing. But then to the last point that was made, when is the time that we say, okay, we've made enough of enough ruffles in the waves that we need to now sit into what we have designed and let it see through for a good period of time so that we can get to the point of high performing or high functioning teams. So that's just my 2 cents and where I am on this topic.
It's good stuff, Christina. Yeah, love that. Thank you. Okay, so just in a summary from my thoughts are a couple of things. One is HR ERP systems complicate the issues because your Oracles and Workday and SAPs and whatever want you to be in a siloed hierarchical structure and almost require it for it to operate. So you quite often end up having this, what we call an administrative structure, and then a virtual structure that delivers value against what, you know, what Chad was saying and other people on the course about that delivery of value end to end, be it teams of teams, etc. So, and then again, just reiterating my other point was that, you know, there's not a one size fits all within the organization. Different parts of the organization will have different structure. And this also applies, by the way, I think in reward and performance and other aspects of the realm of HR. And I think, again, just taking out my feelings for some HR colleagues, there's a heck of a lot for them to change. And it's not about replacing one with another. It's replacing one with 5 others. Potentially, you know what I mean? So it just makes it a lot more complex. But maybe let's just get back to the reward thing. So we spoke about, you know, potentially rewarding the teams, and, you know, how do we then also reward individuals? And I think when we talk about this one, let's talk about salary. So your monthly salary versus monthly salary and benefits versus incentives and bonuses, because I think you need to split those two apart, because then it's an easier discussion to have. So we spoke about team earlier on. Anybody else want to add anything into the reward discussion?
There's often that conversation around transparency of salary across the team. I've personally not experienced it. So when I say transparency, everybody in the team knowing what everybody is being paid from a monthly basis. I haven't experienced it, haven't seen it happen. Don't know if it works.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. I hadn't really come across that part yet about the full transparency. So just a couple of thoughts from my side was, I think that individual reward still applies to salary and benefits. So, you know, at the end of the day, you want to get your salary at the end of the month, and that should be market related. And then your benefits, you know, a similar thing. But I think on incentives and benefits, particularly on those that are working on a team-based environment, to me, those should be team-driven. But it's not just one day that you can change it. So I always tell the story of Mark Cohn, who's a very well-known agilist in the USA, and he had a team that, they'd done exceptionally well, and he gave them $72,000 as a bonus, and there was 12 people in the team. And he said, I'm not going to decide how you split this up. You guys decide. And 2 weeks later, they came back and gave him back the money and said, we don't know how to do this. So there's a maturity level that has to come with this. And I think that there needs to be a lot of guidance. And again, maybe the employee-centered design thinking comes in here, where we actually discuss ways of doing this. Because, and again, if it was for me, I'd say, well, let the team, as long as the maturity is there, the team can decide who were the high performers in the team, maybe even through 360s or whatever it is, but let the team decide. But there will be a level of maturity that needs to come with that over a period of time. I don't know what anybody else thinks on this.
Yeah, this is Christy. I can just say, when I'm now in Denmark, but when I was in the States working for as a DevOps Scrum Master, a very similar thing happened where we got to a point where we were extremely mature. The team had been around for 6 to 8 months, and they had the same thing. They all received a joint bonus based on a great thing that they did in regards to the pipeline. And they had the hardest time deciding who was going to actually take that. So they actually just went out to dinner and had a really great dinner together, which even made my Agile heart happy that they would take that and do something that was more team building and getting to know each other in relationship. So I completely can understand, or I can relate to what you're saying, because I've seen it firsthand.
Yeah, so Mark Cohn, so the similar thing happened. Then they took them and their families out for a weekend because it was $72,000. So it was a lot of money. So the team and their families went together for a nice weekend away, and then they also spent the rest of the money on training courses for all of them. So everybody went on. So they actually split the money out that way. But again, maybe when they get one next month, hopefully they get again next month, it might be different. But again, allow the teams to decide, but they may need some guidelines in the beginning, because you don't want to split the team apart fighting about money. Is essentially what could happen if you don't have that maturity in place. So one of the interesting things that our client in Nigeria said when we were talking about this, so this is the HR director, when I kept on speaking about employee-centered design thinking, she says, "Oh, so you want to democratize HR?" And I said, no, it's not necessarily about democratization. It's about collaboration. It's about consultation. At the end of the day, the company still has the right to make whatever decisions they want to make. But if you want to, get the views of your employees and get the best out of them, at least involve them in the process. Which must probably bring. Oh, sorry, somebody wanted to say something? No? Okay. So which brings me to one that's really closely aligned to this is performance management. So the traditional performance management. So we've just spoken about team. So performance management is normally, like you think, Greta, you're talking about, having your regular one-on-ones, your quarterly reviews, etc., etc. Is the traditional performance management way of doing things old-fashioned? Is it still the right way of doing things? What's your thoughts on performance management in an agile organization?
I can just say, personally, I think the team it's how the team performs, right? They need to figure each other out. They need to storm form. They need to come to high performing. They need to, self-organize, self-manage, all of those things. But when regards to competencies, right? If I'm an individual that, struggles with .NET programming, I need someone to advocate for me. And normally I see that coming from people leadership, and not necessarily, I've seen some organizations have a Scrum Master that has the capabilities to get the training for that person, or to have the funds to be able to do that. But normally we try to separate the Scrum Master, right, as the Agile process person, and then the people leader as being somebody different. And in that regards, being a people leader that serves the capabilities and the needs of the individual, I think it very much is important. Is in regards to performance, though, and how the team is performing, or how the individual is performing, I think that really comes from I think that really comes from the team as a whole, right? So how is the team doing, instead of looking at the individual on that point? So there's two aspects here. There's the people. How do I develop me as a person? How do I get to the next point I want to be at? Somebody needs to help me with that. But as a performance, how am I doing in the team? How am I meshing well, and how am I delivering value, cross-functional collaboration, coordination, all of those things? That's with the team, and that should stay with the team, in my opinion.
Great, Jenny, Gretel, Joe.
I can't imagine a world that doesn't have 360-degree performance feedback. I guess, yeah, it's so subjective as it is, that it needs to be 360. And I guess one of the habits if I'm involved in somebody's feedback on a 360 perspective, then I have to have if I'm going to provide feedback, I have to be able to say it face to face to that person. Because with obviously decent examples, because there's so many times where people have got secondhand information, and it's just Chinese whispers, and you don't really understand what's going on. So I guess it's a minimum viable product in that space for me.
Welcome, Bojan. Welcome to our session. We're having an open discussion, Bojan, about various things in the HR realm of and how it supports agile transformations. We've already spoken about organizational design, and then we just recently finished with the reward, and we're now talking about performance management. So you're welcome to listen in, or also please, if you can, say hello to all of us where you're calling from, and then add any comments you want to as we go along. It's an open discussion. So welcome, Bojan. Good. All right. So here's my thoughts quickly on performance management. So the whole idea behind these two reasons for, I guess, performance management. One is to drive the ultimate performance of the organization, and then number two is to look at the gaps in the performance being delivered by teams and individuals and addressing those gaps. So if I have a look at the first lot, which is the overall performance of the organization, there's very few individual performance management systems that I've seen that can be directly related to the performance of the organization, the overall performance. I mean, I've seen companies that have made huge losses, but when you look at the average performance score of all the employees, it's like, 3.8 out of 5. And well, okay, so the organization as a whole made a loss, but everybody is doing well. That just doesn't relate to me. So the thinking on performance is in the agile space. It may, again, could be different in other parts of the business. Is every single day your agile teams get up and have a daily stand-up. Every 2 weeks they do a demo. We've got Kanban boards in place. Every quarter we do our quarterly review and planning. So literally on a day-to-day basis, we know where we're at with the performance of that team. We know what needs to be done to catch up if there's any need to catch up. We know where the gaps are in the performance. So therefore, I don't really see a reason for any other performance management system. We know what the performance is. But then you may very well have the idea, okay, so how do I develop individuals? And I think that comes, Gretel, to your point about the 360. So the 360 is not just one manager's idea of how you're doing as an individual. It's a 360 degree of how you're doing an individual, and then put together your individual development plan around that. And I guess so I'd had this discussion with a big banking client in India, and the HR director eventually said, "Yeah, no, I hear you, but then how do I give the guy a score out of 5?" And I said, "Well, whoever said you had to give them a score out of 5? There's no law that says that." And again, it was that learning versus unlearning situation of saying maybe you need to unlearn something first before you can learn something new. And again, I wasn't saying to him that that's the way it has to be done. This is my view that, you know, the individual performance management drives individual performance versus team performance. I don't know if anybody's got anything to add on that. Any thoughts? Okay, no problem. I think let's just cover one more topic for me today, is if that's okay with you guys, and that's the whole issue of servant leadership, or leadership as a whole. Because what we see happening is, you know, we again say to leaders, you now need to become servant leaders, but nobody has totally described what that means to them. Have they created psychological safety for the leaders to transform? Some leaders will never be servant leaders. I always say, you know, if a leader is a hyena, he will never ever become a Labrador. He will, or, you know, it's very difficult to change. So, and that's okay, because there's things like situational leadership as well. So in your experiences, how do you see the leadership? Has the leadership in your organization changed sufficiently to be called servant leaders? And what do you think needs to happen for us to move towards that servant leadership?
I think that in the organization that I'm working with, the higher up, so I would say higher than product management, the ones driving the transformation have not moved into, one, a growth mindset, and two, servant leadership. They not all of them, I can't say all of them, but I would say 70% of them say one thing, that they want to have empowerment, they want to empower others, they want to drive value, they want to do all of these things. We don't want to have all the rigid governance. However, their actions are saying something completely different, right? So it's very much the people on the ground, or the troops on the ground, as I like to say, are trying their best to do everything in regards to servant leadership. You have RTEs and Scrum Masters that are truly taking action and doing things like showing their failures and saying, you know, when things are going wrong, and being open and honest and transparent, and trying to foster a good environment for that. And then you have people above them that are kind of still having the governance structure, that are still having the reporting that's wanted, and all of those things. So there's a mismatch in the organization, which means that they will only be able to take the transformation or agility to a certain point before leadership has to open their eyes and say, okay, something's not going on here. And oh, by the way, it's when I look in the mirror, that's not going right. There's something to that. So no, they have not adopted it, and it's felt in the organization, and actually kind of demotivating for the people that are in the Agile organization that are trying very hard.
Thanks, Christina. I'm going to come to you, Jenny. I just want to ask Christina, what are they being incentivized on? Do you think they're being incentivized on servant leadership, or do you think they're being incentivized still very much on just driving results and command and control?
Totally a results-driven organization, right?
Okay.
And totally one MVP. However, they want the presentation that shows everything ahead of time of what's going to be delivered down to the T. I mean, so it's all about, they say one thing on one hand and they do something completely different that contradicts it on the other in regards to results, just clearly results.
Yeah. Thank you, Christina. Jenny?
Yeah, I think we have these mid bosses, not in the top, in the mid. They are easy to change, I think. They work with so much things in the, they don't have to tell people what to do anymore. So they can be servant leaders, and they can manage more people, and they are good at it at our company, but more up in the top, it's more harder to change, because they're not driven, because the mid bosses are stressed today. They have lots of things to do if people asking them things all the time. But now when they have the team manage by themselves, and they can change as bosses, and they don't need to go to the team and tell them what to do and so on. So they can be more strategic. So I think we have a natural changing, and it went very well. But more up in the top, it's harder, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Rajan, do you want to say something? No, okay, no problem. Anybody else want to add anything on this? I think it's one of the areas that I call them the sort of the questions in Agile that still need to be answered, and I think we've touched on them all today: the servant leadership, the org design, the performance management, the reward are the big things. You know, the other things like career management, where you've got mosaic careers, learning and development, where you've got a mix between tertiary, short certification, bite-sized learning. You know, I think those things are happening. But I think one of the other things that HR still needs to struggle with in a way is the whole issue of automation, and how do we integrate bots and AI and all of that into the work that's being delivered at the end of the day. So I mean, it's some of the stuff we do as well with our clients, is saying, okay, so the idea behind the value is to deliver value as quickly as possible. Surely you have to have some automation where you can, but also then added on to that, the other complication becomes then, where's the skills we need to run the automation side of the business, because they're not building that skill out there, and they're in short supply. So I see again, you know, the talent wars are going to get excessively hard into the future. Yeah, but I think so. I want to thank all of you for being on here. It would have been nice to have had a bigger group, but a small group's also nice because you can have really in-depth discussions. Does anybody want to add anything before we close off? And I will, if you want to just pop your email address into the chat, I will send you a copy of the presentation. We'll also have this video up on the Access Agile website, and etc. So please, if you want to close off with any discussions or anything, then yeah, please do so, and then we can close off. Thank you, Christina.
So the 360 feedback, I've been in a couple of companies where they've attempted this, and I say attempted because it's one of those things which sounds really great in theory, but again, it's back to that human, we don't really know how to do it, I think, is part of what you were saying, Myles. I also think people don't know how to, we don't want to criticize people, right? So it's kind of, how do you give feedback in a way that's positive? So as the feedback giver, you want to be positive, right? Or at least I do.
Should
I think
be
most people do, right?
Developmental, yeah.
Yeah. So I think even feedback givers, when it's 360, you know, if it's somebody you're not managing, but you're in the same team or something like that, you want to see them do well. You want them to get the big bonus or whatever it is. So you want to kind of build them up. But at the same time, we as people, if, you know, moving to this way of giving performance bonuses, I absolutely agree. It has to be more team-based and less individual, but I think it has to be a balance as well. But we have to learn as people how we give that feedback so that the right bonuses can be given, and it's not just, we like this person, so we want them to get a good bonus. Yeah.
Welcome, Maru. I can see why you joined us late, sitting on a beautiful ledge overlooking the mountains. Welcome to the session.
Thanks, Myles.
Yeah. Good to see you again. Maru, we're just about to actually close off, but we'll obviously send, you'll obviously get a link to the video. Maybe just also, so what we're doing is we've had some discussions around org design, reward, performance management, and servant leadership in an agile world. Do you want to maybe just share a couple of thoughts around that? Put you straight on the spot, but I know that you've got,
no problems. I love to do that, but I don't think I have anything to contribute compared to you, Myles. I've known you for some time now, and that's your area. But it's my personal experience is that it's one of those chaos theoretically impossibly to model areas of intersection of human psychology, human biases, and a lot of pseudo rationalization and rationalization after the fact that we try to use to justify actions that we know to be unfair. And that's why we still battle with the same injustices and inconsistencies and contradictions that we've battled with for the last 2000 years, at least. So reward and recognition is nothing different from what we've been doing in our attempts at building a just and fair civilization. You can see that socially, you can see that in the systems. If you look at it from a systemic point of view, you can find that in organizations, in teams, sometimes even in families. And it takes a lot of deliberate action, a lot of effort, a lot of commitment to do it justly. And I can tell you that in my career, I have never had the feeling that was done. And I used to have a friend who was in the how do you say, there are people in boards of companies, and this company is one of the top 3 biggest software companies in the world, that are just charged with compensation and benefits. That's the job, and that's a really strategic function for these organizations, because of course they want the people to be happy and be motivated and be committed, be engaged, and also they want to be strategic about that to keep the best people, and also just keep them longer. And it's not like companies fail at that on purpose. It's just a very complicated issue. That's what I want to say on this.
Yeah, definitely, Mara. I think the complexity is huge, but we have to address it, I guess. So, yeah, thank you, Mara. Anybody else want to add before we close off? Great. Well, thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you around again. As I said, if you want a copy of the slides, just put it into your email into the chat. Otherwise, you will get a message. In any case, through the meetup group, it will also be the video will be on the Access Agile website. And please, Access Agile, go to the website and just have a look at how many events now, Joe?
150, I believe.
150 events, free events over 3 days. So take sleeping, take wide awake tablets, and just go in there. There's some brilliant talks, so please sign up for them. And I really do want to thank all of you for being on today. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Myles.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.